This is Mac OS Ken.
A couple of OS updates from Apple, rough sledding for iPhone, and a gritty preview from Apple TV Plus. It is Wednesday, the 6th of March, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. This week's big day of OS updates was not as big as had been anticipated, though the updates that did hit were big in a few ways. Apple on Tuesday released updates for iOS and iPadOS. For modern devices, the Cupertino company let loose with iOS and iPadOS 17.4. Here in the States, the updates include new emojis, changes to Apple Podcasts, and a number of enhancements and bug fixes. The primary podcast change is tied to transcripts. According to Apple's release notes, transcripts let you follow an episode with text that highlights in sync with the audio in English, Spanish, French, and German. Not all at once, though. I've already tried it. You can also read all of an episode's text, tap text to start playing or replaying in that part of a show, and search for a word or phrase. Not to be a naysayer out of the gate, but spoken URLs like patreon.com/MacOSCan are not clickable in the transcriptions. They're spelled correctly, but they don't do anything. Maybe in 17.5. As for the tweaks and bug stuff, changes noted by Apple include the option to make stolen device protection stronger in all locations, the option to have Siri announce messages in any supported language, again, not all at once, more granular battery health info for phones in the iPhone 15 line, the arrival of Apple Cash virtual card numbers, and plenty of others. Now, there is another welcome change not listed by Apple, probably because it won't mean much until developers do something with it. A piece from Mac Rumor says the latest iOS update lets budget apps read real-time Apple Card transaction info. This is a feature formerly offered by Mint. Actually, Mint users may still be able to use it, but only for a few more days. Intuit folded Mint into Credit Karma at the beginning of this year, according to the report, with Mint accounts set to go down on the 23rd of March. That left Apple cardholders not interested in Credit Karma somewhat out of luck as far as transaction tracking. Now the piece says Apple has expanded Apple Card support to other third-party apps just in time for people to adopt a new service. So far, budgeting apps Monarch, YNAB, and Copilot have added Apple Card support. As usual, yesterday's updates came with security fixes, though the list of those is really short. Only 4 security issues addressed in the iPhone and iPad updates, though 50% of them sound particularly problematic. For vulnerabilities tied to the kernel and RT-Kit, Apple says it is aware of a report that this issue may have been exploited. Also out on Tuesday, security-focused releases of iOS and iPadOS 16.7.6, made for devices that cannot or will not make the jump to 17.blank. This one addresses the same kernel vulnerability hit in the 17.4 releases. So, for safety's sake, do the update thing. Of course, the big change for iOS 17.4 is for users in the European Union. A piece from Engadget says with the arrival of iOS 17.4, Apple is adhering to strict new rules in the block when it comes to the App Store. Apple now officially supports third-party app stores on iPhones in the European Union, while developers can offer third-party payment options. Web browser makers no longer need to base their apps on Apple's WebKit, while Apple is opening up the NFC chip to wireless payments that have nothing to do with Apple Pay. I know, the news comes as a shock. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about those changes. Now, perhaps the biggest surprise with Tuesday's updates was how few there actually were. For the first time in who knows how long, Apple released updates for iOS and iPadOS, and that was it. while release candidates are out to developers and testers for macOS Sonoma 14.4, watchOS 10.4, tvOS 17.4, HomePod software 17.4, and visionOS 1.1. There was no sign of those on Tuesday. Of course, Apple had to beat today's deadline for Digital Markets Act compliance in the European Union, which means the iOS update pretty much had to come out by now. Wouldn't be surprising to see the rest of the updates hit this week, but currently, all bets are off. The first part of 2024 seems to have been hard on iPhone in China. That is the indication in the latest numbers from Counterpoint Research. The market tracker issued a release on Tuesday with the potentially troubling news. While China's smartphone sales dropped 7% in the first 6 weeks of this year versus the same period a year ago, Counterpoint says iPhone sales dropped 24%. The firm lists a couple of reasons for that, including stiff competition from local vendors and a seriously tough compare. The first 6 weeks of 2023 saw Apple rebuilding inventory and making up sales missed at the end of 2022 due to COVID closures at Foxconn plants in China. The company saw no similar stop and surge to start 2024. As for the competition, Counterpoint senior analyst Meng Zhang is quoted in the release saying, primarily, iPhone faced stiff competition at the high end from a resurgent Huawei while getting squeezed in the middle on aggressive pricing from the likes of Oppo, Vivo, and Xiaomi. Although the iPhone 15 is a great device, it has no significant upgrades from the previous version, so consumers feel fine holding on to the older generation iPhones for now. From a slump in China to a resurgence in Japan. Counterpoint counterpart IDC issued a release on smartphones in the island nation on Tuesday. For the fourth quarter of 2023, smartphone sales in Japan were down 3.5% versus the same quarter a year earlier. Over the same period, Android sales were down 16.3%, while iPhone sales were up 3.4%. According to IDC, first-place iPhone accounts for 51.9% of the nation's smartphone market. That's followed by second-place Sharp with 10.9% and third-place Google with 10.7%. If Google, not Android, as the third largest vendor is a surprise to you, you're probably not the only one. IDC says the search giant saw year-on-year growth of 527% in Japan. As for what's next for iPhone, that depends who you ask. TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo hit medium with supply chain checks and thoughts on the future on Wednesday. According to the analyst, checks indicate that Apple has lowered its 2024 iPhone shipments of key upstream semiconductor components to about 200 million units, down 15% year-on-year. That could indicate the most significant decline among the major global mobile phone brands in 2024, according to the analyst. No, I am not going to read Tim Cook's words of warning about supply chain analytics, but I am going to think them at you really, really hard. The analyst sees a few high-end paradigm shifts working against Apple currently, including foldable phones. Remind me to get a spit take sound effect, please. Foldable phones and generative AI. Huawei coming in hot in the China market is also seen as troublesome for Apple by the analyst. And, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, it is expected that Apple will not launch new iPhone models with significant design changes and the more comprehensive, differentiated generative AI ecosystem or applications until 2025 at the earliest. That is a surprising assertion given all the noise Apple CEO Tim Cook has been making about Apple and AI and this calendar year. If Ming-Chi Kuo is right, though, the analyst says it will likely harm Apple's iPhone shipment momentum and ecosystem growth. Again, if he's right. Standing on the other side of Planet iPhone is Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives. Apple Insider had Ives telling clients that his firm is maintaining its price target for Apple despite what he describes as a horror show of current problems. Okay, I assume it was Ives. I mean, he is the one who follows Apple for Wedbush. While the Apple Insider article does not mention him by name, it sounds a lot like him. Yes, iPhone sales in China are bad, and okay, Apple abandoning Project Titan is kind of a black eye, but the piece has the firm indicating that cancellation means Apple can deploy staff onto its AI plans, and there begins the improvement. While Ming-Chi Kuo sees Apple's expectations for iPhone sales falling from 235 million units to 200 million, of course, Ives has raised his iPhone expectations for the year. He's moved those from about 225 million units to more in the 270 million range. That's based on pent-up demand for upgrades. While yesterday's Apple Insider piece doesn't mention it, a note from the analyst 3 weeks ago had Ives expecting on-device generative AI capabilities for the next round of iPhones. Running parallel to iPhone sales, Ives notes double-digit growth for services, plus plenty of opportunity to further monetize Apple's active install base of 2.2 billion iOS devices. Mr. Ives has an outperform rating on Apple's shares. His price target on the shares is $250. And finally today, a trailer for a gritty detective series coming soon to Apple TV+. The Cupertino streamer issued a press release Tuesday teasing the Colin Farrell drama Sugar. Starring and executive produced by Farrell, Apple TV Plus says Sugar is a contemporary, unique take on one of the most popular and significant genres in literary, motion picture, and television history, the private detective story. Academy Award nominee Farrell stars as John Sugar, an American private investigator on the heels of the mysterious disappearance of Olivia Segal, the beloved granddaughter of legendary Hollywood producer Jonathan Segal. As Sugar tries to determine what happened to Olivia, he will also unearth Segal family secrets, some very recent, others long buried. I'd be tempted to call it neo-noir based on the trailer. Of course, I'm afraid then somebody would ask me what that means. Other cast members of note include Amy Ryan, James Cromwell, Scott Lawrence, Darwin Shaw, and Nate Cordry. The first 2 episodes of the 8-episode season hit Apple TV Plus on Friday, the 5th of April. Betwixt and between, you can catch the trailer on YouTube. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.